Hello and welcome to today's Safety and Health webcast. What do Brad Pitt and Alex Trebek have to do with predicting and preventing workplace injuries? Sponsored by Predictive Solutions and Industrial Scientific. My name is Kyle Morrison. I'm the Senior Associate Editor with Safety and Health magazine, and I'll be moderating today's session. Thank you for joining us. We'll start the presentation in a few minutes, but first I'd like to go over some housekeeping items. The views of the speaker and his organization are his own and do not necessarily reflect those of the National Safety Council or Safety and Health magazine. Mention of any commercial enterprise, product, or publication does not mean the council or the magazine endorse them. At the end of today's webcast, we'll have a question and answer session. To ask a question, simply type it in the text box located in the lower left-hand corner of your screen and then click the Submit Question button. You can ask your question at any point during the presentation. You don't need to wait for the Q&A session to begin. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can, but due to the large number of listeners today, we may not get to every question. However, all unanswered questions will be forwarded on to today's speaker. For basic troubleshooting information, please click the Help button located on your screen. This webcast will be archived for 3 months, so you can access it after today's live presentation. Within about a day, use the same URL to access the archived webcast. All right, I think we're ready to begin. Our speaker today is Griffin Schultz. Griffin is the General Manager at Predictive Solutions Corporation, where he is responsible for all aspects of Predictive Solutions business. Griffin?
Thank you, Kyle, for that introduction. And Kyle and I were talking before this presentation. He's also very interested in how Brad Pitt and Alex Trebek relate to predicting workplace injuries. And I promise you that we will get to that. But first, I've done a variation of this presentation probably close to 50 times now, and I change it up a little bit every time because we're always finding something new out in our research or in the market. But invariably, I get two sets of feedback. One is that it's too salesy and too focused on our solutions, but then I also get the other feedback that it's not salesy enough. Folks wanted to see a demo. So before we start, I just wanted to talk about some goals of the webinar and sort of what I plan to present. So ideally what I want to do is expose those of you who are not aware of this new paradigm in safety, advanced in predictive analytics, expose that to you. And those that have been exposed to this, maybe give you more ammunition, if you will, to go make a case within your organization for its use. So to do that, I'm going to talk about why we need it in the first place, what's going on right now that requires a new paradigm, and why is this new paradigm possible today, even though it hasn't been as available to us in the past. And then finally, we'll talk about how it actually works in practice, and we'll review some actual case studies, examples, and results. So I usually try to only spend about 35-40 minutes on the content and leave plenty of time for questions, as Kyle said. So let's jump in. So I'd like to start with a story, and this is a story about this new paradigm, advanced in predictive analytics. It's a true story. I'm going to have to change some of the names of the company and the people, but this actually occurred. We've got several of these stories. It's just the one I choose to go through today. But on February 27th, 2013, in Hazard, Kentucky, a guy by the name of John Smith came in to work that day. And his job that day was to open up some shipping boxes that had come in with some materials that they needed. So John did as all of us would do, grabbed the proper tool for the job and started work. Now unfortunately, John slipped and he lacerated his arm and had to go to the hospital. Now, that's not anything extraordinary. There are thousands of lacerations on job sites every year in the U.S., but what is a little bit extraordinary about this story is that this site, this location in Hazard, Kentucky, hadn't had a lost time recordable incident in 9 years to the month. It was February 2004 when they had their last lost time recordable incident. They also have a site safety manager. They have a workforce that's engaged. They have a plant management team that's engaged in safety. They have a behavior-based safety program. They have a JSA program, all kinds of traditional safety paradigms and strategies that they use. But still, no one saw this incident coming. By all traditional safety methods and paradigms, this looked like a safe site, and no one was at risk. But someone did see this coming, and it actually wasn't a person, it was a computer. On February 1st, 2013, what's called the red flag predictive model in our software went off and identified this location as being at high risk of having increased injuries over the next 30 days. Now, this model couldn't say specifically that John Smith on February 27th was going to cut his arm opening boxes with a box cutter, but what this predictive model could say is that the data from the last 90 days that the site was collecting were trending in a way that looked like sites that have higher risk of incidents. And that's when the red flag model goes off. So that's prediction in practice. Now, unfortunately, John got hurt. The plant had not fully adopted this methodology yet, and we'll revisit the story and how folks are using this predictive model today. But pretty incredible that a computer saw this coming when traditional safety methods and humans didn't. So that's a little bit about what we're going to talk about today, so we'll come back to the story. So I said we'd talk about why we need a new paradigm in safety. Well, one reason is this chart, which is probably hard to read, but I can walk you through it quickly. You may have seen this. It's from the BLS here in the U.S. The green line is safety injuries, minor injuries over the last many years, and the darker, flatter blue line is serious injuries and fatalities. So we're seeing less significant injuries come down. We're doing a lot of great work on the cuts and scrapes and the strains and those types of injuries, but the serious injuries and fatalities are flatlining. And that's one of the reasons why folks are calling for a new paradigm in safety. This is one of the more traditional paradigms. You're probably recognizing this slide as Heinrich's pyramid, where people feel like if we can attack those minor injuries, we can also drive those major injuries down, but that last chart shows that that hasn't always been the case. So again, many of these traditional paradigms are falling short, and we need something new. And several times through this presentation, I'm going to say, don't listen to me. Let's look to some outside experts for their opinion as well. This is Terry Norris, the president of the American Society of Safety Engineers, and she said the exact same thing. This statistical plateau of worker fatalities is no achievement, but it's evidence that our efforts have stalled, and we need nothing less than a new paradigm in the way that we protect workers. So again, we want to talk today about this new paradigm of advanced and predictive data analytics. So how do organizations evolve to using advanced and predictive analytics? This chart helps show that. Across the horizontal axis, we have time. Across the vertical axis, we have incidents, safety incidents. You can see they start high and then move to low. What most companies do when they have a lot of incidents and early in their evolution is they do incident investigations, and they find root causes and contributing factors to those incidents, because there are many of them, and you can do robust analysis and come away with good learnings. And then from those learnings, those root causes, those contributing factors, they improve their safety programs. They might focus their training on those specific root cause areas. They might employ a behavior-based safety observation program to focus on specific contributing factors and root causes. So there's many things that folks can do to improve their safety programs. But often, as we showed in the example up front in the story from Hazard, Kentucky, that often falls short, and they continue to have injuries, and they have a difficult time getting down to zero. So that's where this new paradigm comes into play, advanced and predictive analytics. And we're not sure if it will get companies all the way to zero, but it certainly can help close that last mile, if you will, in that journey to zero. So, and again, I would say don't just rely on us for this. Let's look to some outside experts. This is Deborah Hersman, who used to be the chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board, investigating a lot of incidents. Now she runs the National Safety Council. And she was quoted as saying, in almost every accident, they see precursors in the data that could have been used to predict these accidents ahead of time. So I'm sure many of you on the phone, if you're safety professionals, you've done a lot of root cause analysis, investigated a lot of injuries and incidents, and we always sort of think, my gosh, this is so easy to explain, this incident. It could have so easily have been prevented. All we need to do is move that forward, that process, and put a paradigm in place where we can do that before the incident occurs. So that's the why. That's the why we need to be focused on a new paradigm. Now, why now? What allows us? There are some externalities going on today that allow us to do this more effectively than we have been able to in the past. The first one is that we're in an era of big data. IBM, this data is from IBM, says that 2.5 quintillion bytes of data are being created daily. 2.5 quintillion is a 25 with 18 zeros after it. It's a really big number. And 90% of that data in the world has been created in the last 2 years. So we are awash in data as a result of smartphones and sensors and all these things out there collecting data minute by minute. And many organizations that we talk to oftentimes feel like Hoskins here. They're drowning in data. Drowning, ones and zeros, bits and bytes, are not that helpful. Data specifically in bulk doesn't tell you, hey, you need to go help John Smith stay safe while he's opening boxes. It's just raw data. We need a way to turn that data into what we call actionable information, whether you call that a leading indicator or a prediction, whatever it might be. So many folks feel like Hoskins here, that they're drowning in data, but there's hope. There's some other externalities going on. First, there's Gordon Moore, who came up with Moore's Law, that said the number of transistors on integrated circuits will double approximately every 2 years. And that's happened actually more quickly than every 2 years. And the result of this is more powerful computers and systems and machines that can analyze data. So now we have robust data processing systems where a human can walk up to a piece of software or computer and analyze data and process data in a way that we couldn't before. But it still requires a human. A human has to walk up to this computer, maybe run a piece of software and look at some different information elements after processing data and come to human conclusions about where future risk is. But even going beyond that, because computers have become so robust and powerful, there's a burgeoning field of study that's been around for a while but really made huge, huge strides in the last 10 years called machine learning. This is the field of study where computers have the ability to learn without being explicitly programmed. We just give computers millions, billions, trillions, quintillion bytes of data, and the machine, the computer, can see trends and patterns in that data in a way that the human brain simply cannot. So the externalities are at play is that we're in this era of big data. We've got more robust computers to analyze that data, to aid humans, and then we can even go beyond that and have machines analyzing data and processing that and turning it into actionable information. So let's talk about that a little more deeply. This is just a foundational slide. If you take nothing away from this presentation, I hope it's this slide. This is based on a book called Competing on Analytics by Tom Davenport and Gene Harris, and Tom Davenport is one of the foremost experts on advanced and predictive analytics. And he talks about what you can do with data once you collect it, and I think this has been slightly adapted for safety. But he talks about different data strategies that allow you to answer different business questions. And when you start off with very simple data strategies, on the left-hand side, like once you collect data, just doing standard and ad hoc reporting, or querying and drilling down into the data, things that you can do, for instance, in Excel, you can answer questions on the right-hand side like what happened, where, when, and how often. That's basic data access and reporting that, again, you can do with fairly simple tools like Excel. And this is helpful, but again, going back to the evolution of a safety culture, this is sort of more on the left-hand side with a lot of incidents. It's oftentimes lagging data and lagging information, what happened, where, when, and how often in the past. So in order to answer more challenging business questions, Tom Davenport says we have to move up the analytics pyramid and start using different data strategies on the left-hand side, like statistical analysis, forecasting, and extrapolation, what he calls advanced analytics. Then we can start answering more difficult questions like why is this happening, or what if these trends continue? And then Tom says if you want to answer the penultimate question, which is what will happen next, you need a predictive model over on the left-hand side. And that's when you get to predictive analytics. And as some of the results will prove that you'll see later on in some of the case studies, companies have proven that if we can help them predict where their injuries are going to occur, they can optimize their response to that, prevent injuries, prevent those incidents from occurring, and achieve the best outcome, which in our case is injury prevention. So we're going to talk a lot about getting beyond this blue area into the gold, into advanced and predictive analytics. Again, whether you're in the middle of the pyramid or the top, we're going to spend more time at the top. But this is hopefully a big takeaway for folks. Use the tools that you have, even if it's just Excel, even if it's just a piece of software that allows you to move your way up the pyramid. Do something with your data, because it can be very helpful. So again, this new paradigm is getting past the bottom of the pyramid of just collecting and analyzing data in a more lagging fashion, and getting to the top and predicting, preventing injuries. And if you want to go read more about this, this is the book on the left, Competing on Analytics. It's getting a little bit dated now, but still a good book. An even better book is this one in the middle, Predictive Analytics, The Power to Predict Who Will Click, Buy, Lie, or Die by Eric Siegel. And it's not technical, and it just talks about how prediction, how we interact with it in our everyday lives in ways we don't even know. And then another good book, The Signal and the Noise by Nate Silver, also on this topic. But what I'm suggesting here also with these books is that prediction has become, advanced in predictive analytics has become pervasive in society and even popular culture and business. It's been used in business functions like sales and marketing and customer loyalty for years. In addition, whole businesses have been built around advanced and predictive analytics algorithms like Google. That's how they decide what search returns they're going to give you when you search for information on the internet. Netflix, that's how they make suggestions as to what movies you might like. And Amazon, same thing, using these big data sets and machine learning algorithms. I even talk about the Cincinnati Zoo. They did an advanced analytics project on the sale of their ice cream and lemonade within the park. And by looking at different traffic patterns, number of folks in the park, and vending machine placement and all these things, they were able to get a 3,000% return on their investment in this analytics project in the sale of ice cream and lemonade. So I often say if it's good enough for the penguins at the Cincinnati Zoo, it should be good enough to save lives on the job site. And again, don't just believe us. Let's look to the outside experts. Bain & Company did a study of the adoption of big data analytics across about 400 companies, and they found that those that were adopting this paradigm, this methodology, were outperforming their competitors by wide margins. They were twice as likely to be in the top quartile of financial performance, 5 times as likely to make decisions faster, et cetera, et cetera. So again, Bain, from the outside, validating how important advanced and predictive analytics can be. And within safety, savvy executives are starting to get it and starting to demand it from safety. This is the CEO of Exxon Mobil Corporation, Rex Tillerson, and Exxon a couple years ago received the NSC's Green Cross for Safety Award, the highest award for companies committed to safety. And in his remarks, he said that Exxon aims not only to analyze safety incidents after they happen in a lagging fashion, but also identify these exposures and at-risk behaviors before they lead to safety incidents. Again, whether you call that a leading indicator or prediction, Rex Tillerson and Exxon are demanding this from safety. And it's not just them, they're working in cross-industry groups. And one of the reasons is these CEOs, as I mentioned earlier, they've gotten this information from finance. They've gotten this information from sales. They've gotten this information from their quality group. Why can't we get it from safety? They're demanding this of safety, of their safety functions today. So now we finally get to Brad Pitt and Alex Trebek and how they relate to this topic. But first, Brad Pitt might have a little bit of a delay here in our slides, but hopefully you're seeing a picture of Brad Pitt here. And he portrayed Billy Beane, the general manager of the Oakland A's, in the movie Moneyball. And this is a classic example of advanced analytics. It's called the advanced analytics that Billy Beane, the general manager of the Oakland A's, employed was called sabermetrics in baseball. I think this is a great analogy for safety. You probably won't be able to see this chart. It's quite small. But this little red line way over in the left-hand bottom corner of this chart is the Oakland A's payroll. And if you look all the way up to the right, that's the payroll of the New York Yankees and the Boston Red Sox and the Los Angeles Dodgers and some of the big market, big money teams in baseball. So Billy Beane had to figure out a way, okay, I can't get more money out of my owner to buy better players. I've got to find those needles in the haystack. I've got to find those diamonds in the rough. I've got to find those players that can give me a great ROI on a smaller investment. And he did that with sabermetrics, and he was able to compete with some of these other teams with 4 times the salary that he had to buy players. And I often use this as an example in safety when I'm talking to crowds. If this could be interactive, I'd ask you all to raise your hand if you run a safety program and you feel like you have the right budget to keep every employee at your location or in your company safe. Do you have to compete against finance and sales and quality for budget? Do you have to do more with less? And again, just like Billy Beane did with sabermetrics, advanced in predictive analytics, putting your data to work is a great way to do that. So Brad Pitt really helped bring advanced and predictive analytics to the fore in popular culture in this really popular movie. Now Alex Trebek, this one hits a little closer to home for us. We work with a company, with an organization at Carnegie Mellon University, and on building these predictive algorithms. And they've worked with IBM on at least 2 occasions. Over on the left, they helped IBM build Deep Blue, which was the chess-playing computer that beat some of the top chess champions back in the 1990s, Garry Kasparov and others. And it used many advanced and predictive analytics and machine learning capabilities to do that. And then more recently, on Alex Trebek's show Jeopardy, they helped IBM build the Watson computer. And as many of you I'm sure are aware, Watson beat the top human contestants on the game show Jeopardy. But what you may not be aware is that Watson is now being used in business applications and even medical applications. If you go to Google or just go on the internet and search YouTube for Watson medical diagnosis videos, you'll hear doctors talking about how they use Watson as a second opinion on medical diagnoses that they make. So they might see a patient and take their vital signs, look at their data, and make a diagnosis, and then run the same information through Watson. And if Watson confirms their diagnosis, great. They feel like they're headed down the right path. If Watson comes up with something different, they might pause and go back and look at the data and say, hey, did I miss something here? And I think that's a perfect analogy for safety. No one should run their safety program with just advanced and predictive analytics, but it's a great second opinion. We'll talk a little bit about a check engine warning light and thinking about it that way. Alex Trebek helped give IBM and Watson its chance on national television, and really a springboard for it to help in business fields and even medicine. So we've talked about why we need a new paradigm in safety. We've talked about why now and the externalities with big data and powerful computing. Let's now talk about how these advanced and predictive algorithms are built and how they're being used by companies for safety. So first, let's revisit the era of big data. So this is our customers' big data set that they have collected, safety big data set that they have collected over the last many years. Almost 200 million observations across 5 million inspections. Unfortunately, there's 56,000 incidents associated with these same time frames and work locations. This data has been collected from over 18,000 work sites and 63,000 unique inspectors. And this data is not complex. It's very simple safety inspection and observation data and then incident data tied to the same time frame. So it's data that most people are collecting today. It's either going in a filing cabinet or maybe they've digitized that and put it into a database, but they still can't do anything with it. We often talk about the equivalent of a digital filing cabinet. But this data is easy to get, and then once you collect it, if we revisit what Tom Davenport said, you can use different aspects of this analytics pyramid. You can take that data and do basic data access and reporting on it. This just happens to be a screenshot of a dashboard from our software where you can see more lagging information. And then as you move up the pyramid, you can use more advanced analytics. But again, think about the human being walking up to the computer. The human safety manager, risk manager, still has to look at all these different information elements and come to their own conclusions about where their future risk is and where they should direct their scarce resources, as Billy Beane did. But if we move to the top of the pyramid, we have these predictive models, and this is a representation of that red flag model that I spoke about in the beginning. The model will look at all your locations and put a red flag next to those that are at highest risk. And this is machine-based. This is not a human coming to this conclusion. This is a machine using machine learning techniques and huge, huge data sets to identify trends that it's seen in the past in its training data sets. So once we collect this data, we can use the entire pyramid to affect safety outcomes. But again, let's dive specifically into prediction. Let's talk about how we built this red flag predictive model. So like most machine learning predictive model build techniques, you divide the data into two sets, a training data set and then a test data set. And with the training data set, as I talked about, you have inspections and you link those with incidents. So we took 4 years of real-world data from our actual customers to train the model. So it had historic inspections from various sites as well as the incidents, and we gave that to the computer. And the computer just learned after seeing these millions and millions and millions of data elements. And then once it had built a model, we then tested it. And the way we test it is we give it those historic inspections, but we don't give it the incidents. We hide those. And we ask the computer, the machine learning computer, predict the incidents for us. And then we can check it against the actual results. So instead of giving it the incidents, we give it just the inspections and ask it to predict the incidents. And what we found was that, let's go to this next slide, that the models were accurate 85% of the time, which is pretty incredible based on human-based data collection and safety observations. And this breaks down in two ways. If a location gets a red flag, it has about a 66% chance of increased injuries over the next 30 days. If it doesn't get a red flag, it has a 90+% chance of no increased injuries in the next 30 days. So that combined gets us to about that overall 85% accuracy level. So again, you can't run your entire safety program just on a predictive model, but if you're out there as a safety manager, plant manager, as an individual employee, scanning your environment using traditional safety methods, this is a great safety net, if you will, and another arrow in your quiver, just like Billy Bean used or Watson is being used in the medical field to identify areas of risk. So let's go back and revisit our story. So if you recall, on February 27th, John Smith got hurt. On February 1st, the red flag model went off. Well, this location, after this incident occurred, bought into the predictive modeling methodology. So now what they do is, if we go back to the pyramid, every single day, well, they're using the entire pyramid. Every single day, they're using the bottom of the pyramid and looking at basic data reporting. You know, what's going on out there? How many inspections are we doing? How many incidents are we having? Those types of things. And then safety managers, plant managers, other folks are going in and looking at using advanced analytics techniques to come to their own conclusions about their risk. And then once every month, the red flag model goes off and either confirms or maybe sends them off in a new direction about where their risk may be. And the way the model works is it runs on the first of every month. It uses the last 90 days of inspection and observation data to predict where injuries are going to occur over the next 30 days. And again, with about accuracy of about 85%. And what this company does now is at the first of every month, and they do this throughout the month. As I said, there's a safety manager that's identifying risk, others identifying risk. They might have a safety stand down as a result of that. But if the red flag model goes off at a location, they do a safety stand down. And because we can't predict exactly what the injury is going to be, the models are not quite that specific yet, they go back down through the pyramid and look at their other data and see, okay, where are unsafe observations coming from? Where have our recent incidents come from? And they go talk to their frontline employees and say, what's new out there on the floor? What might be driving this risk? And maybe that plant is working at 105% of capacity, 110% of capacity, and they've hired a bunch of new temps to help them get more product out the door. That can be a key indicator of risk. So again, they use the entire pyramid. They're always scanning for the risk, and then this model, once a month, helps them confirm or send them off on another direction. And the results from using this type of methodology are pretty impactful. So this is that same company, and this chart might be hard to read, so I'll just explain it to you. Across the horizontal here is time. This is about a 2-year period. And then this blue line going up on the left-hand side is the number of safety inspections and observations. They actually do JSAs, so the number of JSAs. As they do more JSAs, feed that into the software, use the whole pyramid, including the predictive model, this red line, their incident rate, starts to come down. And you see that repeat across many, many customers. It's not always, the pattern is not always exactly the same. If you see this chart in the upper right, it took this customer a little bit longer to get that intersection with observations and data going up and incidents coming down. In the bottom left, that happened pretty quickly. Again, it sort of depends on the maturity of the organization before applying this. But you can get dramatic injury reduction impacts from employing this methodology. To the point where, on this next slide, you see some pretty impactful financial results. A Fortune 150 energy company reduced its injury rate by 67%. A manufacturer reduced its lost workday rate by 97%. A top 5 public U.S. universities saved over $20 million in insurance fees across 4 years of building projects, and the results go on and on. And a lot of people ask, is there the right sort of profile of company for this type of application? And I would say this goes back to a slide that we showed earlier. This is an incident rate over time, and on the upper left it's high, and then it comes down over time to the lower right. Companies that have a lot of incidents, they can still get a lot of benefit from doing incident analysis, identifying root causes, identifying contributing factors, and building those into their safety program. So while we can help, this methodology can help companies in that area, it's better for companies who have moved down this incident slope and have sort of hit a plateau. And again, more traditional safety methods have helped them get down this incident curve, but not all the way. And often, many of the companies that we work with are world-class companies that are, almost near zero and have milked everything they can out of traditional safety methodologies and want something new. It's, as I mentioned, the Exxons of the world, people that are thinking really in a forward way about safety and using a new paradigm to get to zero. And it's not unique to specific industries. There are many industries that have been able to employ this type of methodology and this new paradigm. And and this is my final slide. So just to wrap up, what I really wanted to impress upon folks today, if you didn't already know it or didn't already believe it, there's demand out there for this new paradigm in safety. Many of the traditional methods that people have been using for many years have gotten us quite far, but we're seeing a plateau. We're seeing a stagnation, a stalling, if you will, in relying on many of the older paradigms. I'm not saying that Heinrich's pyramid is broken, but we're seeing that some of the results, are starting to stray from that, from what he posited in that paradigm. So there's demand out there. We need it, and this new paradigm exists, and it's proven. And for years, it's been proven in other industries and other business functions. It was proven by Billy Beane and the Oakland A's in Major League Baseball. It's been proven by Google and Netflix and Amazon, but it's also been proven in safety. And you've seen some of those results today. And then finally, those who adopt it, as Bain suggested, will differentiate and they will win. They will separate themselves in the market and achieve greater results in a faster time period, in a time when many safety organizations within companies are not flush with people and resources. So it's a way to win and get a high return with limited resources. because there is gold in your data. You can see it in those charts. And the other thing I like to close with is two things. One, in order to get to the top of the pyramid, a lot of companies struggle. You need a lot of data and you need the right tools. But even just pushing your organization from the bottom of the pyramid up just a little bit can return great results. So if you have Excel or a safety software system, take that data, do as much as you can with it. Don't just look at lagging data. Turn that into leading indicators. You probably can't do machine learning prediction with it, but you can certainly move your organization forward and get some insights from that data. The second thing I like to close with is we talk a lot about data and machines and computers, but ultimately it's all about people. Our customers and the folks that employ this paradigm are not successful unless they have the right people that can we'll take data and turn it into actionable information, but then you need the right people that can take the right action and go convince people on your job site, whether they're frontline employees or the CEO or the people that control the purse strings, to change. Whether it's buying new safety equipment or driving new training or changing human behavior of people on the job site. It still takes people. And just like Watson is not going to replace doctors, prediction is not going to replace safety professionals. We need knowledgeable folks that can take this information, pull this new arrow out of their quiver, and do something with it to change safety outcomes. So with that, I'll wrap up and say thank you very much for your time, and we'll take, I think we have a survey here, and Kyle will come back on, and we'll take whatever questions are out there.
Great. Thank you, Griffin. That was a wonderful presentation. Absolutely. We want to get to some questions. We have a lot. But before we get to the questions, I wanted to remind everybody about the survey that I mentioned at the top of the hour. It's a short survey, and it should be appearing on your screen now. I want you to consider filling it out. Your input is important, and it directly helps us improve future webcasts. If you don't see the survey on your screen, make sure that your pop-up blockers are turned off. All right, Griffin, let's dive into some of these questions here. I want to start with some of the data. What if data at a company doesn't match yours? Can people still predict with it?
Yes, potentially. Again, you need a good amount of data, and you need the right tools. Our red flag predictive model is tuned to a specific type of data, but we do basically consulting engagements with other customers outside of our software whose data might be different. So for those who haven't invested in a lot of data collection, oftentimes they'll use our safety net software that has the red flag model built in. If they've already spent years collecting data and don't want to change the way they collect data, oftentimes we can use that data in a more customized analytics engagement. And still derive answers. Sometimes the data that they collect is predictive, sometimes not. We just don't know until we work through the process.
Okay, great. Where do you see the future of prediction and safety going?
Yeah, so a couple areas. Our research with Carnegie Mellon has shown that the more data elements, not always, but generally the more data elements you can add to a machine learning predictive model, the better the accuracy rates. So if all you can give us are your historic observations and inspections, we can get to a certain accuracy rate. If you can give us historic inspections and observations and your incidents, we can get to another level. If you can give us that information plus the size, or maybe with man hours or production levels of a location, we can get to even more accurate levels. So for us, it's just about getting more data from our customers, which is a little bit of a double-edged sword because companies can't grind their operations to a halt and just go collect all the data that safety wants. They still have to operate the business. But one of the things that's helping this is sensors. So there are sensors out there that can collect information without a human having to step out of the production line to go collect that data. So we believe the future is no doubt more data results in better outcomes for advanced and predictive analytics. And the fact that, number two, it doesn't have to be humans collecting that data is a huge help. So you hear about the Internet of Things and connected sensors and equipment that is certainly going to help the field of advanced and predictive analytics.
Along those lines, how important is it that the data being analyzed is complete? I mean, what is the minimum number of data points needed for good predictive modeling?
Yeah, it's really hard to say that there needs to be a minimum. Again, if you have a model that was trained on enough data, you don't need a lot of data to use that model. So, for instance, in our model, you only need 90 days of data to have that model give you a prediction. Now, it will be more precise if you've trained it on your data, but we find this model, again, to be highly accurate even on data that it wasn't trained on. Because, again, safety data being collected today in the form of inspections and observations is still quite general. If you go to a construction site, the way they collect and the way we treat the data is very similar to that of a manufacturing site. It's not exactly the same, but it's close enough that we can use that data. So you don't need a lot of data to use a pre-programmed model. If you want to create a new customized model, then yeah, it usually takes at least a couple of years of data, and that data, you need to be collecting observations weekly and monthly at a somewhat significant rate.
How important, or rather, how many inspections a month, for example, would be needed for the predictive red flag model to work? Would you need to have so many every month or so many every year?
Yeah, again, it's not a specific number. So if you say more than 5, we usually need to look at the data and see. Sometimes it's just more about what's in the data than the volume. So there's a little bit of an art here in addition to science. But usually what we find is that a single location with only one person collecting observations probably be difficult for them to get high accuracy from predictive models. But again, think back to the whole pyramid. That doesn't mean that you can't get value from that data and turning that data into leading indicators that might not be a discrete prediction, but can certainly send you in the right direction from a risk perspective.
Okay, great. I get the sense that we have a lot of listeners here who work for smaller employers, because we have quite a few questions coming in about the size of the facility. Does the size of the operation matter? Can this work in a small business atmosphere?
Yes, it can, and that's why we use the big data set that we described earlier. The closest to 200 million observations. We train our models with that data. So if your data is anything similar to that, and you're a small company, you should be able to use that general predictive model. It should still work. Now again, it will probably work better if it's tuned specific to your data, but we know that that's one of the issues out there is many companies don't have enough data to create their own unique model. That's why we've created this general one out of many of our customers' data. So yeah, it shouldn't be an impediment. Now again, we don't know until we get in and dig into the data and put it into practice. But again, I wouldn't throw out the rest of the pyramid. Even a small company that is collecting a small amount of data, the predictive models should still work, but if they don't, and if you don't have access to those predictive models, again, transforming that data into actionable information just by moving up the pyramid a bit can be really helpful.
Do you know the average size of the company in terms of employees that use this paradigm? Is 50, 100, 1,000?
Yeah, we think about it more of a revenue perspective. If someone is around $200 million in revenue or higher, we have customers in that range. We do have customers that are lower than that, but generally that's sort of a good rule of thumb to think about.
Okay, great. Another question about the red flag model. Is this something that can be run monthly, providing almost immediate feedback?
Yes, so we run it at the beginning of every month, and it looks at the last 90 days of data, and then it predicts forward for the next 30 days. So at the first of every month, there would be a notification that, let's say you have 10 locations, one of those might be red flagged, or all 10 of them might be red flagged, or none of them might be red flagged. It all depends on the data. But yeah, it's run once a month, and we've experimented with running it more often, and without getting into too much detail, we found that the 1 month seems to be the optimal for the best results, but also optimal for those who are getting that information to actually go do something about it. If you're changing that every day or giving new information too quickly, it's just not operational. You can't do much about it. So that seems to be the sweet spot. But when we talked about the future of prediction, one of the earlier questions, we believe that we will get to higher frequency and higher levels of accuracy. And when I said, today we can't, for instance, say that John Smith is going to cut his arm with a box cutter on February 27th, I am hopeful and believe that at some day, it might be far off in the future, we will get to models that can be that specific and that discrete and get to that level. Now, a lot of that will require a different level of data to be collected. But again, I think with the sensors and all the other information being collected out there, as that IBM slide suggests, we're just going to see more massive and massive levels of data coming in that will allow us to do more.
Great. Now once a prediction has been made, what's the next step? Is it implementing, training at a location? I believe you mentioned a safety stand down. Do companies want to do things like that, or what are their options once a red flag comes through and a prediction's been made?
Yeah. So a few years ago, all we did was provide the red flag, and many customers got frustrated. They're like, "Okay, I got this red flag. Now what do I do?" With our red flag model, now when you get a red flag, there are you get some feedback as to why the model flagged your location. So you can take that information and go take action with it. But just as good, if not better, is so if you get a prediction, you're at the top of the pyramid, you work down through the pyramid and go look at your other data and go look at your safety observations, go look at your inspections and see what are the trends in there. It's sort of like the check engine light on your car. You drive it into the garage, and then the technician takes a look at it and says, "Okay, what exactly is going on here?" So the best way is to go in and look at your data and see what that information is telling you. And then, as I said, also take a human approach to it. Have a safety stand down. That's what many of our companies do. They have a standard operating procedure when the red flag comes out. Take the feedback that we provide. See if that's actionable, and then go take action and/or go back down through the pyramid, come to separate conclusions, your own conclusions about the future risk. Have a stand down with that location. Talk to your frontline employees, the plant leadership team, see what's going on. Take human data into account, and then go do what safety people do. Retrain folks, maybe buy more PPE. Change procedures, do those things that we do to prevent injuries.
Great. Now, could you give some examples of inspection findings or risk observations that were used to predict injuries?
So if I understand the question, I think all I can do is really describe the data. So basically, it's pretty general safety inspections. You're walking around your job site and you're observing safe and unsafe conditions and sometimes behaviors. We have folks that use this for more compliance or conditions-based safety, but also behavior-based safety. And when you find an unsafe, you record the severity of that unsafe. Was it low, medium, high, or even a life threat? You record whether or not you were able to address that unsafe right there. So for instance, if you walk up to somebody and they're using the wrong PPE, if you can get them PPE and give it to them right there and fix the problem, you record that. If it becomes an open issue, then and you don't have the PPE available, for instance, you need to go order it. That stays as an open issue, and I'll come back to that in a minute. You can take pictures, you can add comments, those types of things. But it's pretty standard data collection. Now, back, I think a little more to what this question may be getting at is one of the triggers that the model uses to identify if a location is at risk are those open issues. Are they getting closed out in a timely fashion? Do most open issues, when you find it unsafe and you can't solve it immediately, so you don't have the right PPE or you got to send somebody to training, how long does it take for those things to get closed out? Do they get closed out within 24 hours, 48 hours, or does it take 4 weeks for your organization, for that location, to solve those open issues. And that can be a trigger. If you're taking forever to close out those open issues, that's generally a location that's at high risk. Now again, that's some low-hanging fruit that the model might look at. There's very detailed and much more deeper analysis that the model does that we can't often even see. It's hard to break these models open and see the causation. We could have a whole other conversation around correlation and causation, but what these models are really finding is correlation, not causation.
Okay.
And that's why we say, you don't run a whole safety program just on a safety model. Because sometimes the causes are nuanced. And again, we can't say John Smith, February 27th, with a box cutter, but what we can say is this location is looking like a high-risk location.
Now, how dependent is the system on the quality leading indicators? Is everything we're talking about being reported near misses? Does the quality of these near misses or what's being reported matter? How does that factor into the system being able to predict or throw up a red flag?
Yeah, so there's two answers to that. The predictive modeling experts, the data scientists, will say that low-quality data oftentimes can help improve a model. So, for instance, and this goes back to the last questioner, let's say you have two locations. One location, 99% of their inspections and observations come back safe, maybe even 100%. Many people would think that that's a safe location. People are walking that job site, they're not finding anything unsafe. Plant 2, or B, is only 70% safe. People are finding all kinds of unsafes. Which one is more unsafe? Sometimes the model, based on other data elements, will say that the location with the higher percent safe is unsafe. We call that flying blind. Your folks are pencil whipping, and that's identifying risk. If they're pencil whipping their inspections, they might not care as much about safety. They might think, oh, I don't need to worry about safety. I don't need to worry about these silly inspections. We're just going to put a line through all the safes. Yeah. That can oftentimes, the model can key on that and say, and again, not just that data element, but others, and say, hey, I'm going to give this location a red flag. And that can be a little bit counterintuitive to what people might think. The second answer to that is less around the predictive model and lower in the pyramid, around the middle of the pyramid. There are ways, and this is specific to our software, where you can identify the quality of your observations. You can identify those pencil whippers. You can even identify the opposite, which are what we call the ticket takers or the ticket givers, the safety cops, where all they find is unsafes. And you can isolate those folks, their data, and coach them on how to do better observations and give you better data. So the data scientists would say, quality of data is not a big issue. I just want your data because it's going to give me insight, even some of the low-quality data. A safety manager that's using the middle of the pyramid is going to say, and our folks are going to say, let's find those folks that are returning bad data or lower quality data and do something about it.
Now, along those lines, do the inspectors need to be specifically trained in safety, or can pretty much anyone be an inspector going around making observations?
Yeah, so we propose that anyone that you can get involved in the program, the more people, the better. And there's, if I can push this other screen up out to the audience, if you go to our website, there's some white papers. One of the white papers talks about some of the findings as a result of our research in building these models. And we found this is a little bit counterintuitive to some as well. If 100% of the people, if all the people doing inspections on a job site are safety professionals, you often have more incidents than those locations where 0% or a small percent of safety is doing, safety professionals are doing the inspections. One, there's a wisdom of crowds phenomenon going on, that just when you have more eyes looking at stuff, you're going to get better information. But two, as many safety managers believe, you want to have everybody thinking about safety. You want safety to be everybody's responsibility, everybody's goal, everybody's objective, everybody's value. If you can transfer that responsibility of safety to every individual and get them to do safety observations and inspections and buy into the process, you're generally going to have a safer location, and that's proved out in the data. So the more people you can get doing inspections, number one, the research shows you're going to have a safer location. Two, you're going to have more data to feed into the analytics. And back to the question, some level of training, should occur, because otherwise you're going to get the pencil whipping. You're going to get the lack of quality. So at some level, you want to train people not just how to work a handheld computer and get the data in, but how do you rate the severity of an unsafe observation and things like that. So we do a little bit of that level of training.
Okay. Now, when it comes to the collection of the data, can the data be collected through mobile devices, smartphones, or tablets and the like? Are these programs cloud-based systems?
Yes. So both the analysis is cloud-based, and then we do have some data collection apps for mobile computers and phones. So we have an Android-based app, we have an iOS or an Apple app. Our main app via the internet, and you don't need internet connectivity to work those apps. They're native to the phone. But our internet connected app is accessible by some Windows portable computers, tablets, and things. So so you can collect them that way. You can also, a lot of companies still, collect this information on paper, might put it in a pile for an admin to enter in, or we even have a scanning solution where you can collect the information on paper and then scan it into the software. The scanning functionality constrains just a little bit the level of detail that you can collect, but it's still enough to use the whole pyramid and even the predictive analytics capabilities. And we find that those folks who are collecting information out in the field in real time on handhelds and phones and tablets, there's no lag in the data. If it sits in a pile on someone's desk for a week before it gets entered, obviously, that's not going to lead to the same level of accuracy and analysis. So collecting it out in real time, being able to take a picture, and those types of things is really helpful.
Okay. We have time for one last question, and it's kind of on a related topic. What about companies that, they may already be collecting data, they might have multiple locations, and what about situations where each one of those locations uses, different forms? Would all those locations have to start using the same type of form or the same lines and the same form and everything?
Yeah, no. So we do allow for a certain level of customization of inspections at different locations, but you want to get some standardization. If every checklist is different, you can't roll up the data. So what we may do is, if you have 5 locations, maybe 80%, or you pick 60% of the data that everybody collects is the same, and then you leave that last 20%, that last 40% for them to customize. And that customized data may not be included in the roll-up analysis and in the predictive analysis, but the standardized data can be. Because you don't want to tie the hands of every location if you have unique locations that have slightly different or dramatically different work procedures.
Okay, so it doesn't have to necessarily be the identical form, but they should be collecting similar data points for the most part. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, unfortunately, we have run out of time. I'm sorry, there were a lot of questions we didn't get a chance to get to, but please remember that all unanswered questions will be forwarded onto Griffin. Once again, I hope you take the time to fill out the evaluation survey, and that concludes our Safety and Health webcast. I'd like to thank Griffin, Predictive Solutions, Industrial Scientific, and all of you for listening in. Thank you, and have a great day.
Thanks a lot, Kyle.